You're watching GrassRoots TV.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Dick Merritt, United States Marine Corps retired. We are recording on Tuesday, the 26th of May, 2008 at GrassRoots Television in Aspen, Colorado. Fred Crowley is being interviewed, and his birth date is 18 December 1946. Attending the interview today is Karen Woodward recording and Julie Wigg on the camera. We are working for the Aspen Roaring Fork Veterans History Project in association with the Library of Congress and the Aspen Historical Society. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Colonel.
Good to have you with us.
I appreciate it,
And
sir.
we just want to start out and find out what war you served in and what was the branch of service.
You know, Colonel, first of all, I tell you what, I know that you have your routine and everything, and leave it to a Marine to see something and want to change it. But I'd like to say just a couple of quick things, if you don't mind, before we get started. Number one, I'd like to congratulate Colonel Merritt on his award that he received yesterday at the Memorial, a Lifelong Achievement Award, for what he has done in his dedication to the service of the members of the community, the Valley, and especially the veterans. So congratulations on something that everybody said is well-deserved and long overdue.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate that very much, and I do appreciate the Marine Corps cover that you gave to me, Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And then just quickly, you know, I know this is probably out of the ordinary also, but I'd like to dedicate this interview and et cetera, is, you know, to the two most important people in my life, which are my brother and my sister. My brother Paul, who's also an Army veteran, and my sister, Mims Kelly Mears, who recently remarried after being widowed for 10 years. And her children, Reagan, Gareth, Catherine, and Brendan. Also, you know, to fellow veterans like yourself, Howie Berg, Honorary Marine, Tommy Munn, Bob Perigo, Sergeant Bill Crow, Sergeant Jimmy Hastings, who's a lifelong veteran and a friend and a survivor of Tet. And then also to my many, many good friends around here, like Tom Perry, Billy Woodward, Little Masters, the Tweeds, Richard Sarazant, Liedica Van Schlingerhart, who you know, Sheriff Bob Bradis, my cousin Doug, Bill and Mary Ellen Works, but not to go on, but just the hundreds and hundreds of people in this community that have made the past 38 years for me so special to live and be part of this community, and I love it and I love them. And that being said, I'm sorry to digress, but it means a lot to me that
Fred,
these people know that I love them and appreciate them.
You've made a great impact this community. It's appreciated, and you're continuing to make an impact working here with the disabled American veterans in your visits. And I would mention, like to mention Howie Berg, and the who passed away, a Marine, was in the Elks Lodge here and was very instrumental in funding this project, along with the Thrift Shop and the Pitkin County Commissioners. So you served in the overseas?
Yeah, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and I served in Vietnam in 1967, 1968 with the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division.
And did you serve any place in the United States before you went over to Vietnam?
Yeah, I mean, I like everybody else. I did my boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina, and after that, then I went to advanced infantry training, which was in North Carolina, Camp Lejeune. And we went directly, you know, after the boot camp, directly into AIT, no leave, no liberty. We didn't even get a night off to go out into town, hoot and holler. It was boom, right into the next step. And then after approximately 6 to 8 weeks of AIT, we were then given a 30-day leave and given our permanent duty assignment. Since I had joined for 4 years, they were sending the draftees, and a lot of the 2-year enlisted were going right to Vietnam. So I was sent from there to a naval ammunitions depot in a Marine barracks to provide security for that. In 1966 is when I went there, and that was in Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
Oh, I enlisted, yes, sir. I'm quite proud of it. I wanted to make the Marine Corps my life and my career.
Can you tell me a little bit about your family, educational background, and what your father did?
Oh, yeah, my father was, as we talked about, my father was just an absolutely brilliant man. You know, he had 2 PhDs. He was a college professor back in, this was all in the Boston area. He served as superintendent of schools back in one of the Boston areas. He was principal. He was a high school teacher, you know, junior high. Went through the whole gamut of it. And, yeah, that's as far as that goes. The educational course, my sister graduated from college, and my brother and I all graduated from college, as my dad did also. Quite, you know, he has 2 PhDs and a couple of master's degrees. And my mom was also a college graduate, so it comes from an educated family.
What was your education level when you entered the Marine Corps?
Not too good.
Well, let's hear about it, Fred.
As a matter of fact, I was kind of a rebel when I was in high school, so I never graduated from high school. And I joined the Marine Corps, and that's how I ended up getting my high school diploma, was while in the Marine Corps. I took the GED examination and scored quite well on it and did quite good on that. And that's what I used at a later date. After I got back from Vietnam, I know we're jumping around here, but after I got back from Vietnam and decided to go to college, I used the GAD plus my dad's help to get me into a college. So I did attend college, even though not a high school graduate.
So you do have Boston connections then?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, I've got a lot of good friends back there, etc. You know, and fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not able to make it back there as often as I should or whatever.
Do you have any relations at military that settled here in Aspen that may have influenced your later life?
Oh yeah, my Uncle Art Franklin came here in 1951 with his wife and my Aunt Kay and 2 little young'uns at that time, probably about 6 and 2. And he dropped my Aunt Kay right across the street down here in Bleecker Street in 1951, just put him in a house. He said, "See you later, I'm off to Korea." Well, he had served, he was a career Army pilot, and he had served in World War II as a glider pilot. And he is also involved in the Berlin airlift. And one of the things that he told a story that he was one of the ones that evacuated a lot of the guys out of Berlin. And one of them he brought back here was Breezy Zordell.
Oh, we know Breezy.
We know Breezy quite well, and Breezy spent years as a POW in Germany. And it was funny, they didn't know each other or anything else like that. He was just a pilot, and all these guys were pretty much probably in stretchers and hospitalized. All of a sudden in 1953, when he got back from Korea, he walked into the hardware store down at Sarge's, and all of a sudden they froze. He looked at Breezy, he looked at him and said, "We know each other." And, you know, they started talking about it. But, yeah, my aunt and uncle came here in 51, and he opened a camera store because he was a professional photographer, etc. And then he went and served in Korea, but he also served a tour in Vietnam, and he retired out as a full bird colonel.
Why did you join the Marine Corps? You had options, didn't you, to be drafted or?
Colonel, you're a Marine? What other
I know,
options
I
are
know,
there?
but
There's the Marine Corps and there's all those other
for our
guys.
guests, though, just tell me the reason that you picked the Marine Corps.
Well, I tell you what, you know, it has always been touted as the best and the most difficult, and that they're going to make you a man and, you know, can change your life as far as that goes. And quite obviously, the direction that I was headed in coming out of high school, I needed a lot of shaping and changing. And I thought that the Marine Corps was the best, and I tell you what, I love the dress blues uniforms too. So, but, you know, and I joined to basically, you know, help better myself.
What were your first days like in the Marine Corps?
Oh, yeah, well, I went to boot camp at Parris Island, and like half the Marines in the country, you know, half of them go to Parris Island, and the other half go to San Diego. Pretty much boot camp is a lovely experience, quite warming. But I'll never forget the first time we arrived on, on Parris Island on a bus, and we were all sitting there, and we had no idea what was coming up. We were all a little nervous, obviously, and they stopped the bus, and the biggest and the ugliest and the meanest man I had ever seen in my life got on the bus. Started screaming at us immediately. We had no idea what he was screaming, but that also went on for the next 8 weeks. Whenever anybody wanted to talk to you, they always screamed at you to make sure they got their point across. Anyway, He yelled at us for a while, and he told us, now I want to take a moment for you to give your soul to the Lord, because your butt is mine. And he says, now get off this bus. You got 10 seconds, and 5 of those seconds are gone. And we had to pile off that bus, stand at attention, and from then on in. Now, that's basically what it was like for the next 8 weeks.
Do you remember the names of any of your drill instructors?
Oh, yeah, I had our senior drill instructor was Gunnery Sergeant Kane, and then we had Staff Sergeant Caldwell was the assistant drill instructor. Sergeant Pope was recently returned from Vietnam, you know, because that was back in '66 when I joined, February of '66, and there weren't all that many Vietnam vets that were returning quite yet, because, you know, in the 65s and 66. So, and we had 5 drill instructors, and those are the 3 that I remember. Of course, you know, the thing about that is that, you know, that was 42 years ago, and some things tend to slip from my memory here.
Do you feel that you were prepared, well, let's say physically, when you entered the Marine Corps?
When I entered the Marine Corps, absolutely not. You know, but it doesn't take them long to train you as far as that goes. Now, basically, for the first, well, for the 8 weeks that you're in boot camp, you either PT or you're on the move, PT, you know, physical training. You're on the move for 20 hours a day. You're lucky if you get 4 hours sleep a night. You know, they let you go to sleep, and then, you know, probably about 5 o'clock in the morning, the trash cans come crashing down the aisles, and the drill instructors are screaming and yelling and beating on you, and you're doing either push-ups or you're running, or they're getting you physically into shape. That, and as you know very well, being a Marine Corps officer, etc., the Marine Corps idea is to take the first couple of weeks and just break you down, you know, so that you think that you're absolutely nothing by the names that they call you and everything. And after they break you in those couple of weeks, then they spend the next time training you to become a man and to instill the ideals that basically you and I and Marines live with for the rest of our lives.
You're then a recruit until you become a Marine at the end of 8 weeks of graduation.
Yeah, we'll say that again now.
You are a recruit. You're treated as a recruit and not as a Marine.
That's quite a polite name when you say treated as a recruit. Yes, yeah, we are called recruit and many other names, etc. And I mentioned this to you the other day that, you know, the pride in the Marine Corps. Other services, they're always jealous of us. You notice this at the DAV clinic and everything, is because we have a certain pride that's instilled in us. And it's just a brotherhood that you cannot explain unless you have stood on that parade deck and have your drill instructor turn around and say, I will now address my Marines. You know, and he turns around and he screams at you, good morning, Marine. That's the first time you ever heard that word out of his mouth, you know, and the pride and the hair stands up on your ends, and you are just, the hair stands up on your arms, and you're just so proud at that moment that just carries with you for the rest of your life.
Well, the Marine Corps has a way of identifying talents and skills and potential, and they administer tests when you're in boot camp. Were you tested? Do you remember any tests that you took?
Yeah, we took a battery of tests when we were in boot camp. And I scored very well on those, on the test. So one of the alternatives they gave me after about 6 or 7 weeks in there, they had a kind of a career guidance counselor who would come in and offer you alternatives. And they said that I had scored well enough on most of these test scores to qualify to go to officer candidate school. You know, I was coming in the back door, you know, whereas you earned it.
And you're a non-high school graduate with potential to go officer candidate school.
Yeah, see, that will let anybody be an officer, right?
No, Brad, you have intel anyway, so you tested out well then.
So I tested out well, and one of the things that I had applied for, and it was waiting orders when I was shipped to New Jersey, was I had applied to go to Pensacola, Florida, to go to Navy flight school through the, well, you know, they're the Marine Corps flight school, but we were attached to the Navy. And unfortunately, Vietnam came first, and I said, well, wait a minute. I'm waiting to go to flight school. I said, what about that? And they said, it'll be here when you get back.
That's the Marine Corps way.
Exactly.
So you finished EIT at Camp Lejeune. That was 8 weeks, and then they set you up to Naval Air Station up in New Jersey?
Yeah, Colts Neck, New Jersey, just outside.
What were your duties there?
Basically, they told us that it was an atomic weapons storage facility, and we all found out later on, we think that this was probably let's say, misleading or not the truth, but anyway, our job was to provide security for the Navy base because naval subs would come in and out and be loaded and offloaded on ordnance there. So we would provide security for the whole base there.
I'm familiar with that. I was involved with nuclear weapons in the Philippines. Very similar situation.
No.
What was the name of that that station there?
It was just naval. It was Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Colts Neck,
naval,
New
yeah,
Jersey.
naval. NWS, I think, Naval Weapons Station, and I think that since then they have closed it down.
So what was your military occupational specialty, your MOS?
I was a specialized rifleman, 0311.
0311, all the Marines know that.
Well, the thing about that is that most people don't know that every single Marine, whether or not it be from Chesty Puller, Ron Christmas, General, Ed Pace, yourself included, you're all trained as a basic rifleman.
That's right.
0311, and that's your MOS. Then you get your subsequent MOSs. Some do, some don't.
I trained as artillery, but I wound up with a rifle company in Hastings in Vietnam.
Right.
So you're prepared. I had cooks and bakers and clerks and truck drivers and half of my battery. So every Marine, we did well there.
Yeah, but every single one of those cooks and everything else knew how to fire a weapon, clean a weapon, and handle themselves in hand-to-hand combat.
That's right.
That's your primary goal.
Yeah. So how long were you in New Jersey?
Just a little bit under a year, because I went there, I think, in June or so of June of 1966, and then I was shipped over to I was given orders and sent to Vietnam in the spring of '67.
Did you make any stops in CONUS in the United States before you went to Vietnam?
Yeah,
between New Jersey?
Yeah, we got 30 days leave, to go home and, pack our gear and say goodbye to everybody and do those kind of things to get ready to go over there. And then our first stop was at Camp Pendleton, which is down by San Diego in California, where we did an awful lot of just basically dry land training and kind of acclimating you to get used to the heat. Because when you go to Vietnam, as you know, the temperatures over there sometimes, God, I tell you, I don't, to digress, every once in a while we'd hit the 120s, 125s. And I remember the hottest day that we ever had over there that I knew was 132 degrees. But I remember how hot and miserable that was. And then I look at these poor kids in Iraq today, and with the gear that they've got on and everything, boy, they're better Marines than I was.
Well, did you go any place, Okinawa, en route to Vietnam or straight in?
Yeah, nope. After Camp Pendleton, we spent, like I said, a few weeks out there getting ready, and then they sent us over to Okinawa for more of the heat acclimation because it was more of a jungle climate in Okinawa. And we spent about 2 weeks there. And then from there, we went to Da Nang. And in Da Nang, we were given our permanent duty assignments. Because, see, we didn't go over as platoons or as groups or as squads. We went over as individuals and individual replacements. So I went because they needed some more men at 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I went out there. The guy that I did all my training and most of my Marine Corps up until that point, Sergeant Jim Hastings, he got sent to 3-7. So I mean, even though we were together, et cetera, they didn't say, oh, you two can go here together and continue to play together. No, that wasn't part of the program.
Well, that acclimatization is very important. I spent a couple of months on Okinawa with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines before we went into country, and it made a lot of difference that we could adapt a lot better. So when you got into Da Nang, what organization were you assigned to?
I was assigned to 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, the 1st Marine Division. And their base camp was located, their battalion headquarters was approximately 20 miles outside of Da Nang in an area called An Hoa. And so I was brought out there on a helicopter. And from there, well, I was 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, and then from there, I got out there and they assigned me to Echo Company. And then from Echo Company into the 3rd Platoon. So that's how you were given your assignments that way.
Right. The 5th Marines is one of the most famous regiments in the Marine Corps.
It's the most highly decorated.
I was with 3-5 up there on Hastings, and my brother in 1957 was with Fox 2-5 at Margarita there at Camp Pendleton.
Oh, okay.
So what was your mission when you got assigned to Echo? company?
Basically, we were just security everywhere. I mean, it's hard to describe our missions out there since we don't really know what we, in retrospect now, 40 years later, to look back and say, what was my mission? Well, our mission basically was for me to try to keep my men. I started as a fire team leader, progressed to a squad leader and then a platoon sergeant. And our job was to keep as many of our men alive as we could. Now, we went out, and the battalion area we had to keep secure by setting up around the perimeter of that. But also we would go out on ambushes and raids and everything to seek and destroy the enemy and try to disrupt them wherever they were. Which, as we all know now, was extremely difficult because they would just assimilate right into the villages. And then at night they would then come out in their different uniforms, being the Viet Cong, etc. And
this is in the Anhua area?
yes, sir.
Yep.
Yep.
And, you know, you mentioned about keeping your troops safe or bringing them back in. And, of course, the main mission of the Marine Corps is success in combat. And then from there we do everything else, your patrols and your search and destroys and listening posts and ambushes. Well, Fred, did you encounter any...
Take 2 seconds, Colonel.
Okay, we'll take a little break here.
Okay. Are we off?
Yeah, here.
Thank you. Excuse me.
So we're back to An Hoa in Vietnam, Fred, and at one point you were out. Did you receive any injuries there on the battlefield?
Yeah, the first time that I got wounded was on a routine patrol. We thought when I had a guy, we surprised a bunch of the Viet Cong along the trail. One of them jumped right up in front of me and cranked around right between my eyes. But fortunately, it hit my helmet, but it went around the back of the head and cut my head. And basically, when it hit the back of the head, it cracked the skull. And when the skull shifted, it was cause for paralysis on my right side. And so I went down, and I was then medevaced out of there into into Yokosuka Naval Hospital in Yokosuka, Japan, where I recuperated from wounds, and they put a plate back in my head and sent me back in country.
Do you remember anything from the time you were wounded until you got to Yokosuka?
No, absolutely not. As far as that goes, they told me, that after this thing happened, all hell broke loose, and basically, no, I don't remember any of it because I was unconscious, and I woke up. I guess I had been unconscious for probably 3 to 5 days when I woke up in Japan, and I was paralyzed on one side. So then they said, okay, we're going to operate, and we're going to see if we can relieve the pressure on your motor sensory nerve. And fortunately, it was just that it had put pressure on it. So once they relieved the pressure, I came back, and physically was fine.
So you
physically, I put it.
You weren't sent back. The States Marine Corps wanted you and needed you in Vietnam?
Marine Corps needed troops over there, and they needed,
with a plate in your head.
Yep. No, I was a Marine, what the hell.
Right.
So.
Let's take a look at this photograph here, Fred. This is, when was this taken? Was this after you were wounded?
That was after I was wounded, and I went back in there. I brought that as an example of how different we looked back then, Colonel, because that's me on the left-hand side, and that was probably late September, early October of '67, and the guy on this side over here was Manny Ramirez, my machine gunner. Great guy, and I was his, at that time I was his squad leader, and unfortunately Manny was killed about 2 weeks after that was taken. But look at how lean and mean and young we looked.
Yeah, there's the Marine Corps belt buckle. You can always tell a Marine, even with his shirt off.
Exactly. A little bit of difference between then and now, huh?
Belt buckle.
We had hair back then, Colonel.
Right. Did you get any advancement or any additional responsibilities after you got back into Vietnam?
Yeah, when I got back into country, I was reassigned as a squad leader, which was basically you've got up to approximately 15 guys in your squad, in a rifle squad. And I served as squad leader till about the middle of January when our platoon sergeant was wounded and, medevaced out. And on the way out, he promoted me as platoon sergeant, which is the way I served until the Tet Offensive when I got wounded and medevaced in February. '68.
What rank were you as that temporary platoon sergeant?
As sergeant, I was a corporal, but basically they called you Sarge.
Did you actually ever receive the promotion to sergeant?
No, I received the promotion, but it never came through. You know, in other words, I was promoted in the field, but it's one of those things that never caught up with me by the time when I was discharged, it was as a corporal. However, everybody still knows me as Sarge, you know, so.
So that's the way it is
That's
in combat, and maybe that's the way it is in the Corps, too.
That's exactly right. You know, so.
I know I was in Vietnam for a year, 12 months, and I was supposed to go home, and they couldn't find me. I was up on the DMZ with the Vietnamese paratroop battalion.
That's your story, huh?
They didn't know what I was. So I spent an extra 3 weeks in Vietnam.
Well, it's a lot better being down in Da Nang doing whatever, huh?
Right.
Exactly.
So you got wounded the second time, and then were you involved in any major offensives after the second wound? Any of the big battles in Vietnam?
Yeah, that was basically the big one that we were all involved on. Well, we were all involved in pretty much in country. Was on January 31st of 1968 is when the Tet Offensive. Now Tet is, from what I understand, Chinese Tet is the New Year, the celebration of the New Year. And it was supposed to have been, the way I understand it once again, kind of a truce to let people be able to celebrate. However, the NVA, the Chinese, and the Viet Cong launched the biggest offensive of the war to that time. And they went in and they just tore Saigon to pieces. And they were fully mobilized. They were ready for this, and our intelligence was way behind, and they caught us way off guard. They went in and totally leveled and destroyed and killed most everybody in Way City. And that's when that's when 5th Marines, under the command of, at that time, Captain Ron Christmas, went up to see what kind of support they could, see what kind of trouble there was up there. And it was funny, like I said, the intelligence had, there's some North Vietnamese or maybe some Chinese regulars in there. And when we got there, they had totally inhabited the whole city. And as a matter of fact, the NVA flag was flying over the city where it used to be the American flag at one time. So that kind of gave you an indication as you looked across the river at the Citadel, and you went, uh-oh, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought it was. And it turned out to be, over 30 days of just horrific, clashes, hand-to-hand combat, door-to-door, going an inch at a time to try and take spots.
Ron Christmas, what was his role at that time? What rank was he?
He was a captain at that time, and he was company commander of hotel company. And he was quite a go-getter. He's quite a guy, very well respected.
I know him, and he's now very involved with the new Marine Corps Museum. He's headed that up, and I'm going back in 2 weeks to see that. So yeah. I'll pass on information. And Ron, any other?
He got shot up pretty badly at Way, and if I'm not mistaken, he received the Navy Cross while he was in there, which is the second highest honor that you can get in the Marine Corps.
Do you remember any other officers that served with you in the Tet Offensive? Lieutenants or anybody like that?
Yeah, I didn't meet him at this time, but I later heard that a second lieutenant first arrived on the scene to take over his new post and his new duty assignment as a platoon commander of one of the platoons in Golf Company. And at this time, Second Lieutenant Ed Pace, who recently retired as former Commandant of the Marine Corps and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as a 4-star general. And he showed up as a second lieutenant to take over, and that was his first assignment in Vietnam. And the poor guy, just coming off of the parade deck at ROTC, and from what I understood, he was quite a guy. He walked in and he said, "I'm in charge, but you guys tell me what to do." He said, "Well, everybody will keep alive." He's supposedly one hell of a fighting Marine.
Smart Marine Corps officer.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, did you catch any more bullets or anything in
Yeah,
Way?
I got shot once more in the hand in Way City. As I was waving to some of my guys, all of a sudden I took a round in there. And that's where they medevac me then from there down to Da Nang. And being that was the third or fourth time that I had been hit when I got down to Da Nang, when you got to Da Nang, they were doing the triages and everything, and it was just, the casualties were just phenomenal as the amount of people who were wounded and killed. And so they'd hang a tag around your neck. And I looked down, and all of a sudden they had written on there, Yokosuka. I looked at that and I thought, I'm not going back to Yokosuka. They'll send me back here again. So I sat down with Doc. I said, "Doc, I've been shot too many times." And I told him my story and everything. And he goes, "Oh, give me that tag." And he turned around and he wrote, "CONUS, Continental of the United States." And boy, I smiled all the way. And then they put us on a C-130. and it took us probably 4 or 5 days of island hopping to get back. And I was then brought to the Chelsea Naval Hospital, and I landed in U.S. soil February 19th, 1968. And that was the second beginning of being reborn again, so to speak. And,
So you were in a holding pattern for Pensacola. Did that question ever come up that you might heal enough to go to flight school?
I brought it up, and they said, nope, you're damaged goods. As a matter of fact, I wanted to stay in the Marine Corps, and they said, no, I'm sorry, you know, you're basically, we're going to give you they call it a 68% multiple disability wound discharge. So I got, you know, retired out with disability, and they said, like I said, you're damaged goods, and I said, well, you damaged me, and they said, that's all right, that's all right. So as far as flight school or any of that, all that was off the program, and I was discharged out in September 1968.
So what is your disability rating right now?
I'm at 100% disabled.
100%
Yeah, because of,
and what does that give you, Fred?
You mean it gives
as far as privileges and
yeah, it
hospitalization?
gives me a monthly check as far as that goes, and then I also get hospitalization at the Veterans Administration's hospitals, which I tell you what, I cannot say enough good words about the men and women that serve in the VA hospitals. You know, they've caught a lot of grief lately about some of the stuff back there with Walter Reed and the rest of that. But these people are dedicated, caring, knowledgeable, hardworking people. And I've used the VA services a lot for my health care, et cetera. But it also gives me base privileges where I can go on base, et cetera. It's almost like still being active duty. Like I said, the VA healthcare system is top notch, and I'll defend them to anybody who wants to cuss them out or whatever.
So the Marine Corps did educate you, and did you get any type of a GED or anything like that?
Yeah, as I told you, while I was in, I took my examination and got the GED, which is general. They call it general equivalency diploma, which is equal to a high school degree supposedly. And then when I came out, I used that as my high school diploma, plus the pull-in connections that my dad had to enter into a community college.
Well, while you were in the hospital, Fred, let's take a look here.
Oh, yeah.
You brought a newspaper clipping in, and I'll just leave that there. And it says, why don't you read that?
Yeah, this is, you know, it always comes up as far as that goes, that the welcome home that the veterans will receive.
It says 2 GIs stabbed in hippie fracas.
Hippie fracas, yeah.
In the 60s.
And a lot of people say, now, Colonel, you had your own personal experiences when you were welcomed home and called the baby killer and all these other terrible things.
Right, I went through that.
And a lot of people back here were just, and once again, now this has all changed, which is fabulous because the American people can separate an unpopular war from the veterans. You know, so I wasn't 20 years old and start a war. I went over there because my country told me that this is a place that I should go serve, and the same as you. So when I came back, I was expecting, not demanding, but I expected a little bit of respect and gratitude or whatever. And when many of us came back here, we were not greeted very warmly, and you were spit on and cussed and called a baby killer. And a lot of people say, oh, these guys always over-exaggerate it. You know, none of that stuff happened. Here it is, right there. Headlines in the Boston Globe newspaper is Ed McGilly, who was an airman in the Air Force, and the headlines read, now this is the Boston Globe newspaper, July 23rd, 1968. 2 GIs stabbed in a hippie fracas. 2 servicemen still recovering from wounds in Vietnam were stabbed early this morning in front of the Arlington State Church in the aftermath of a police raid on Boston Common at a peace rally. And then it goes on to give more information about that. But we went to watch. There were 5 of us that were assigned to the hospital at that time. We went down to watch a peace rally and see what all the fuss was all about. And in the middle of that thing, the fight broke out, and somebody recognized that we were servicemen because we still had hospital uniforms on, or partial uniforms, and we came over and they started roughing us up. And in the process, Gilly and myself both got stabbed in that thing. You know, Ed was in, as it says in here, in critical condition. His name on the danger list is Airman Ed McGilly, and less seriously injured was Marine Corporal Alfred J. Crowley. So we were both stabbed while watching a peace protest.
Were you standing up and trying to move away, or?
No, at the time, Gilly had gotten stabbed, and he went down on his back, and it hit him. When it hit him in the stomach, it hit a main artery. So that's why he went, right into critical. And it was doing a blood pumping thing. I knelt down over him to stick my hand in and tried to get him, come on, Gilly, stay with me, talk to him. And all of a sudden, his eyes just went way wide, and I thought, oh, no, we're losing him. Because you've seen that look before in combat. And I looked at him, and I said, oh, my gosh, he's going to go. And then what he was doing was he was looking at the guy up above me who was stabbing me. The guy reached over and stabbed me in the back twice and then ran off down the alley. So, welcome home.
Welcome home.
Yep. So
well,
that's why
the 60s were tough. Well,
a lot of us did.
You were discharged from Marine Corps. Did you pursue any further education? Or?
Yes, I did. I then went to a community college in Worcester, Massachusetts, where after 2 years I got really active in school. It all goes back to your Marine Corps training, and we'll talk about that as we go through life here, is that in the Marine Corps they trained you that basically you can do anything that you want, and you set your mind to it. And you always want to do the absolute best that you can. And so when I got into college, I tried to do the best I could, and I ran for president of the student government and got elected to that. My first shot in politics was back in
your first shot in politics.
Yeah, and so I did that, and I stayed very active, and I managed to, in 1970, upon graduation from college, got my name nominated, and I was elected as a member of the 1970 edition of Who's Who in American Colleges and Universities. This is the same Dumbo that never graduated from high school.
Congratulations.
But I'm in Who's Who.
So what'd you do, come to Aspen and join Aspen, go attend Aspen State Teachers College?
Yes, well, I became a full professor very quickly.
Well, Fred, when you got that AA degree, did you stick around Boston, or?
No, immediately after that, which was in 1970, that's when I had toyed with going on to different colleges, and a friend of mine, and I decided to take a trip cross country. This was in September of 1970, and I know you'll find this easy to believe, but he and I were going to go to California and become movie stars. And so we took our trip across country, and rather than dragging the whole story out, got to Aspen, Colorado, and we're going to stay here about a week, and that was 38 years ago, and I'm still here. Because I just fell in love with it all over again, and I said, I'm not going to leave here. And my good friend went back he returned to Boston, and actually I went back there for a couple of months, enrolled in Clark University in Worcester, which is it was one of the minor Ivy League schools, very well-respected school, and I just couldn't get the Aspen itch away. So I came back out, and I've been here ever since.
Did you have the GI Bill available for any of your educational experiences?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's what made it so attractive to be able to apply to some of these better institutions. Like Clark was a very, very expensive private school. It's one of the minor Ivy League schools. And I applied to Harvard, because I was going to get a full ride as a disabled veteran to be able to pay for the schooling, so that was very helpful. Yeah, the GI Bill was and is a great tool.
So what were your entry-level positions, so to speak, in Aspen, the start of this 38 years?
Well, I started off right at the very top, naturally. I was working at the Silver Tree El Dorado as a bellboy. Bellhop, and of course I was making, with a college degree, etc., 54 cents an hour. Yes, sir, boy. Of course, like everybody else, what I was there for was they gave me a place to live, and I got a ski pass, so we got to ski every single day. We had a place to live, and we were just enjoying life at the fullest. And I did those during the wintertime, and in the summertime I worked construction, like a lot of the rest of us as far as that goes. And then I went back up, and I did that till about 1974, and then I got full-time into construction. And in 1976, I applied for and got the job as building inspector for Pitkin County at that time. And that's when I, became the building inspector for the Pitkin County, was in 1976.
So you probably had to study to become appointed to building inspector.
Well, actually, I was very fortunate in the fact that when I got appointed to the job, it was supposed to be temporary and part-time. yet when we got in there, realized that a couple of the other inspectors had quit, and as I said, I just started off as a part-time inspector, and they were looking for somebody that they could train, etc., to become the building official, so to speak. And that in those days, the department was 3 or 4 people. You know, I
Patsy
mean,
Newberry.
Patsy Newberry, Jack Campbell, myself, and Jeff Davis was county engineer. Bob Nelson was the environmental health department. If you notice, the whole departments are 1 people at a time, and now that has all quite changed. The planning department was 1 person, but that was way back when. So, and that has all since changed.
So after the building inspector, did you pursue any other interests?
Oh yeah, as all the time as building inspector. You know, basically it was a full-time position, and I was paid okay as far as that goes. It was nice to be able to make a living, and I decided it was funny. I decided in 1980 that I would resign because it was becoming way too political. The commissioners at that time were doing all their down zoning. That was the Shellman, Edwards, Kinsley era, and a lot of their decisions were pretty unpopular. But unfortunately, they made the decisions and passed them on to the building department to enforce. And I thought, this is way too political as far as that goes. I just don't want. So I finished up in the last day of 1980, and then I went out and went back to work, put my tools on, because I'm a master electrician, and built myself my own little company. And as I said, I resigned because it was way too political. And then I decided with the aid and encouragement, sorry, Bobby, I got to do this to you. Bob Prattis encouraged me to run for county commissioner. And as a matter of fact, he helped me in my quest for that. That was in 1984. I ran, my first time was against George Mattson, and I lost by 0.5% of the vote. But then I ran again in 1986 for what was at that time an empty chair. And I got elected in 1986 as county commissioner.
Well, I remember...
and no, you don't have to study to be a commissioner, quite obviously.
I remember those days, Fred, and I remember Sergeant Rick Bush, United States Marine Corps, campaigning for you in a snowstorm in his dress blues on the S-curves over here.
Exactly, yeah. It was so funny because I remember that was election morning, and I had never met Rick before. We served in Vietnam at the same time. We were in the Marine Corps the same way and everything. Actually, Rick, I think, was more over there when you were over there in 67. And
66, 67.
yeah, 66, 67. So basically my tour was subsequent, but we had a lot of parallels as far as that went. And somebody came walking into the courthouse at about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was standing in the courthouse because that's where they're doing the election. And they said, how the hell did you get here so fast and get changed? I said, what are you talking about? They said, we just saw you out there on the corner in your Marine Corps uniform. And I said, no, not me. They said, well, there's somebody out there. So I jumped in my car and went out. And there was Rick Bush in full dress blues with a great big sign, Crowley for commissioner, and all red, white, and blue and stars and everything, is standing at full attention in a roaring blizzard of snow, freezing his butt up, but he wasn't going to budge, boy. And I went up and introduced myself to him, and after that we became very, very close friends. Now, Broadus tells that story, and he's got a little off-colored version of that thing, which is much more interesting, but I don't think the Library of Congress would appreciate.
I understand. I know, Fred.
You know that story, yeah.
But, you know, Rick Bush in spirit lives in with us, along with us. We yesterday celebrated Memorial Day, and he was very instrumental in getting the memorial going there. Could you tell us a little bit about how that memorial came about?
No, it's funny, in some of the pictures that we were looking at, I have a picture of myself giving a check to Chuck Cole. Now, Chuck Cole and Dan Glidden and Rick and a couple others were the ones who really came up with this idea. And so they were looking for fundraisers, and at that time I was president of the Fraternal Order of Eagles. Oh, no, actually at that time I was secretary. So I said, hey, we'll do a dinner dance and raise money. And so I've got a picture way back in 1984 of the Eagles being the first ones to donate money towards the memorial fund and presenting them with a check for over $1,200. And as we said, you know, Rick was very instrumental in that, as was Dan Glidden, yourself, me, and, you know, the fundraising went on. And then the actual dedication of that was
9th of August, 1987.
1987? Well, yeah, it was 90. Okay.
We just celebrated the 20th anniversary, and thank you, Fred, for being the moderator and coordinator of that. We marched down Main Street from the Hickory House, and did that happen when we dedicated it?
Well, as you recall, when we dedicated that originally, some of the guys marched all the way from Glenwood Springs up here, and they terminated their march at the dedication. And they did some interviews, et cetera, and then the next couple of days, you know, and they carried the American flag, the POW flag. And it was funny because they started out with 2 or 3 guys. When they finally got here and were coming down Main Street, people were honking their horn and joining in, and they had a hell of a crowd by the time they got to the courthouse on that day of '87.
Well, that spirit still remains. Yesterday we had in excess of 350 people at the memorial, an all-time record.
It was unbelievable.
And so many that we mentioned. We lost Howie Berg, who was instrumental in this project for interviewing for the Library of Congress. And also, remember last year we put a flagpole up at the Aspen Grove Cemetery?
On Flag Day, for June 14th.
Right, and Howie was instrumental in getting the funding from the Elks, and Rick Bush is buried up there. And we went up there the other day. Jim Markalunas had put American flags on every veteran's grave and roses on every headstone.
Yeah.
So, and also...
Jim was actually, have you interviewed Jim on these particular things?
Jim's been interviewed, yeah.
Now, he was a Korean Marine, correct?
Right, Korean Marine. And Dan Glidden has been interviewed here, and he, Navy veteran, put the flags out on the Red Butte and the Ute Cemetery. So the spirit is very, very strong.
Well, another thing that's very nice to see here, and it took a while to get to that point, is the support that the community, not the community, but I mean the support that the veterans are receiving from the county commissioners, the county, and the city council, and the city. The community has always been just unbelievable as far as supporting us and welcoming us home and everything else like that. And, you know, when we talk about this particular type of episode, that is all in the past. It's time to be put to rest as far as that goes. It becomes part of you because it's how it shapes you. We were ashamed to be veterans for 10 or 15 years. Can you imagine that we, you know, I mean, I'd be asked when I was in college, hey, you one of those veterans? Oh, no, no, no. You know, instead of being proud of what I had done and served, as we now are, and it took a long time to come that way.
I retired here in '79, and we dedicated in '87, and 8 years I've been working construction and teaching skiing, and it was asked that everybody had served in Vietnam to step forward with a lighted candle on that night. There were 75 veterans there,
yes.
And I knew these veterans. But I didn't know they were veterans. I didn't know they'd served in Vietnam because nobody ever talked about it.
Right.
And that was a coming out, so to speak,
well,
for us.
And that's what has been so helpful through the healing process. I mean, we have a lot of events being held there at that particular memorial. And as you recall, when it was being built, do you remember that quotation by, was it Tanazi, that said, this is not a place to mourn the dead, it is to celebrate life? And that's the thing, that the memorial was put there so that it's some place that you can go, that you can, you know, think about the living, say thank you to the people who served, etc. So it's become quite a healing place in the community. And it's been also fantastic for us to meet. You and I probably maybe never would have crossed paths. We may have, but there's no way that we would have the bond that we have today if it wasn't through meeting through the Veterans Projects and the Marine Corps.
And part of us is in that memorial, Fred. My dog tags are in the cement. I don't know what you have
I've
there.
got a couple of medals that I put in
there.
there.
Rick Bush had a Purple Heart and jump wings there. And many of us do have that. And you mentioned the support from the community. Mayor Helen Clanderwood has always been at our events, and Mayor Mick Ireland was there yesterday.
He was there yesterday,
and
yes.
when we rededicated last summer, remember all 5 county commissioners were there. And that was really heartwarming that they turned out to support the veterans, as they always, and they've supported this Library of Congress project that we're doing now also. So we really are very fortunate to have the support.
And as you know, that well, now this year they're talking about having well over 100 vets march in the parade on 4th of July. And as you'll recall, when Sally Roach and you,
Glenn.
Sally Glenn, and you Roberts first got this started, there were only maybe 4, 5, 6 of them or whatever, and it took a long time for a lot of guys to come out and say, okay, I'm going to march. But and I use that term extremely loosely, because anybody who's seen the veterans come down the street, it's more like a loosely disorganized moseying is what we're doing. So, and, we were taught how to march, Colonel. What we do out there is not exactly marching. But the ovation, and I tell you what, I have never made it from start to finish without crying my eyes out. Just, it still does it to me now.
The crowd is standing and clapping, and it took me many years. I was probably one of the last ones to hold out. I had personal reasons not to. I didn't want to have water balloons thrown on me by draft dodgers. That's how I felt. And Howie Berg was the one that finally got me to march.
Right.
Dick Bush got us going, and it just, now everybody's out there. So it's really good.
And who did you get to march?
Well,
me.
I got you. Fred.
Exactly, yeah, because you
you
convinced me finally the same way.
Let's back off a little bit to some of your construction work, Fred. Just within the last 10 days, we've lost one of our real fine community leaders and physicians, Dr. Robert O'Dane. And I was just wondering if you had any comments you wanted to make about Bob.
Yeah, I mean, what we could fill up another 2 hours of just talking about Bob O'Dane and what a special doctor, Bob O'Dane, what a special person he was and what he's done for the community. What he did nationally, he was very active in the U.S. ski team as orthopedic surgeon, very active on the Olympic squad, and he was. I was very fortunate to have him as a business partner in a development we did down in Durango, Colorado about 15, 18 years ago. And Bob was just a wonderful, wonderful man. And the community will very much miss Bob O'Dane and his presence.
Yeah. We've had a lot of fun over the years and fundraisers. I'd like to just put this up on the screen here, Fred, and
see if they can show that one, huh?
Let's go ahead and show it. We're having a little fun here today.
Exactly.
Why don't you explain that photograph from the Aspen Times of March 6, 1991? 91, yeah.
Yeah, back then the Rotary Club was very active in having what they called the Aspen Highlands Scottish Days.
We were members.
Yes, we were members of the Rotary Club, and during that particular day, we would all go out there and be involved in a fundraiser to ski and raise money. And that particular day, a bunch of us decided to wear kilts, and we have Gordon Denton who was out there, but not in his kilts. And I don't know if you can see these guys. This is the Colonel here in his skirt. Behind him was Wink Jaffe, who was very active in Rotary, Chuck Carlton. And there's your 6'7" sheriff in a dress, and standing next door to him is myself, and we're all in kilts, and we were involved in that ski race that day to raise money, which was one of the activities that we've all been involved in all throughout the community.
The Highlands Fling.
Yeah, the Highlands Fling was in there.
And Wink Jaffe brought down one of his Highland steers,
Scottish,
and displayed it there.
Yeah, one of the Scottish Highland Bulls, yeah.
Yeah, and we've lost Wink along the way.
Yes.
You remember the days we had the W/J rodeo out there?
Oh yeah, I was very active in the Lions Club when we had that out there, and it was a great couple of days. And unfortunately, a lot of those things we've lost. The Deaf Camp picnic, and I mean we can sit here and cry and spill milk about a lot of the stuff, but I don't know who to give this credit to, so I won't. But there's a guy, when we were talking about the 70s and 80s, he said, well, we had the donut without the hole in it, and it was just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful place to be in the 70s and the 80s. We had the beauty of what we still have today. I mean, it's still a beautiful community with wonderful people. Look at all the people that turned out yesterday, and the people who were active over there in the Elks doing that kind of thing. But we were a much more close-knit community then, because it wasn't quite as expensive to live here then. And we were a lot younger, so when we talk about living, we could be doing it in somebody's basement on their couch, But
well, tell me a little bit about your education experience. I understood that you became a professor at Aspen Teachers College. What was your title?
I was a professor of political science, which would go right along with the fact of being involved in politics all the time. And Aspen State Teachers College is just so, and it's funny that a lot of the people that don't even remember it or that have been here, and I'll say, oh, you remember Aspen State? And they say, no. Because basically it kind of fell apart in the mid-'80s, and Aspen State was started in the mid-'70s by, Al Pindorf and Slats Cabbage, and basically the whole town was part of the campus, and we were all part of the student body, and we partied and had a good time, and we made fun of everything. And so, and that's what was very important and kept things light, was that we were able to make fun of ourselves and laugh at ourselves. Nowadays, everybody's a little too serious to be able to take the time out to laugh and relax.
They used to march in the Winter School Parade and the 4th of July Parade.
Used to always lead the parade, yeah. The Aspen State Teachers College Marching Band.
I had a decal in my car, Aspen State Teacher College, and I was a campetto in the Marine Corps, and officer would come up to me, gee, what kind of a college is this? So I tell him a little bit about it, but it was really a lot of fun. And did you have a get-together here, and a reunion, so to speak?
Yeah, we had a reunion of the Aspen State Teachers College. We did one back in 1991. And, we had only been disbanded, basically. Everybody just kind of drifted away in the mid-'80s. So in 1991, we decided to do a reunion. And as we started getting in touch with people, oh, I can't come back there. There's a warrant out for my arrest. Oh, I can't do this because I've got a lawsuit pending with so-and-so. So we decided to call it the first annual Aspen State Teachers College Amnesty Reunion. Whereas we had Sheriff Bob Brattis and Chief of Police John Goodwin declared a 3-day stay of emergency, so to speak. Whereas if you return to town, you wouldn't be arrested for any previous crimes or whatever.
Tickets or whatever.
Anything else like that. But Sheriff Bob said, but on July 5th, you don't let the sun set on your butt if there's a warrant out for you. So we had that reunion. It was quite a lot of fun. We decided to have another one. As it turned out, it's probably going to be the final one because a lot of the guys have passed away since then. We had the reunion here in town, and we had a great, we had the prom at the Elks Club and a special dinner and everything. And since then, we've lost people like Bob Nelson, who was very active in it, Big Jimmy Furness, who was one of the the anchors of the whole college, etc. Al Pindorf, one of the co-founders, has moved to Brazil. So people are just basically thinning out all over the country.
You mentioned the Elks Lodge, and you and I are both Elks. And over the years, Fred, what would you comment about the role of the Elks in the community today as far as a lot of changes here, but the Elks are still here?
Yeah, the Elks are here, and it's it's a lot of the core members of the community. We often kid about that lately over the past few years is, boy, we don't get to see anybody unless there's a memorial and somebody dies or whatever. And pretty much then most of all the festivities are held up at the Elks Club. But the Elks is extremely active. The other day they gave away over $100,000 in local scholarships up and down the valley. Can you believe that? And they are also, if it wasn't for the Elks Club, I sincerely believe that the disabled American veterans would not be able to pull off the ski classic or the winter sports classic that we have every year because of the involvement of all the Elks. And everybody does anything from building ramps to putting out ramps to, you and Perigo running the ski range down there. Billy Woodward and Bill Crow loading everybody on and off the gondolas, and just everybody, Pink Schultz and everybody out at the airport. So every time you turn around, there's an elk in your back pocket doing that.
The Elks just donated $100,000 to the thrift shop to rebuild the thrift shop. And so the reason we're sitting here, the Elks made an initial contribution, as did the thrift shop, to provide the funds to get this project going, and now we're off and running. So we're very grateful for that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Disabled American Veterans Winter Sports Clinic. You're very active and have been over the years. Can you give us a little bit of a history, your observations, how that's developed, and what it is today with Sandy Trombata?
Yeah, now I think this year was the 22nd year of the ski classic, or the sports classic they call it.
It's been indifferent. It was at the Crested Butte. But,
well, when it first started out, it was down in Grand Junction. That's basically how it got up here, was that Sandy Trombetta, now that they were at Powderhorn, and that was, I think, back in 1987, 86 or whatever. But the point of it being that they were holding the ski classic down there, and the weather was just so crummy that they were looking for other activities to do. Sandy contacted Rick Bush, said, you know, we'd like to bring a bunch of the veterans up to Aspen so that they can see it. We have wheelchairs, we have certain restrictions, etc. And Rick got a hold of me over at the Eagles and said, how can we make this happen? So I said, okay, what we'll do at the Eagles is they can pull into the great big parking lot there, unload all the buses and the vans, let the guys go anywhere they want in town. However, the Eagles will be open, we'll serve them free lunch. The bar will be open, won't cost them a penny. And they brought a different group of those guys up every day for 4 days in that week. That was way back, I think, in 87 or 80. Yeah, let's go back to 87 or 88. And everybody loved it so much that they decided, hey, if we can pull it off, in 1991, the first one was held here in Snowmass. Through, you know, the contributions of the skiing company at that time was very active in it. But it didn't, I don't remember the exact history then, but it didn't work out too well. So they went over to Crested Butte for a few years. But they've been back here now for a number of years, and you know, we want to keep them as long as we can because it's a great event.
The community supports us, and we get phone calls asking what we can do, and this community is very, very supportive. And as you know, we have disabled veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. So we had an 85-year-old here from World War II on this last one, and about 70 from Iraq and Afghanistan, actually from Walter Reed.
And how many women did we have present this year?
55.
Yeah. And I mean, there was some severely disabled, like that one gal that was the helicopter pilot that had lost her legs, you know, and she was quite a pistol too. But it's nice to see that they're getting those veterans into the system and getting them more active so that when they come home, they're saying, hey guys, yeah, you're in a wheelchair, but it's not the end of your life. Look what else you can do. That's why these projects are so important.
That's right. And this year, Fred, we had a first. We had 55 women attend.
Right.
It's a lot. Stop and think about it. And Ann Owsley hosted at the Woody Creek Community Center an evening of tea and dessert, and all 55 of the women came, and Betty Pfister came down. Betty was, of course, a transport pilot during World War II.
Right.
And we're going to interview her in a few days. And I talked to one of the nurses later, and she had been in Vietnam, an Army nurse, disabled, and told me that this was the most wonderful thing for the women to be able to get together and focus on their issues, and it's going to be a follow-on thing. So we do want to thank Ann Owsley so much for coordinating that.
Yeah, and as we know, the women do have a totally separate, you know, set of issues as far as that goes.
Exactly.
I mean, the men have theirs, the women have theirs, and then together as veterans, we all have our issues.
So we're developing this support, and I think one of the reasons we have such large turnouts now at Memorial Day and Veterans Day is the concern for the situation in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
This community is very, very aware and very caring and feeling about the veterans and those that have gone on and lost their lives to support this country.
Right, exactly. You know, some gave all gave some. You know, so as far as that goes.
Well, Fred, we're right getting toward the end of the interview. Is there anything that, well, I'd like to ask you first, so what veterans organizations do you belong to?
Well, I belong to the American Legion. I'm a lifetime member of the American Legion, and since 1968, I've been a lifetime member of the Disabled American Veterans. I'm a member of the Marine Corps League, and I'm also a member of the Purple Heart Association. You know, people that were shot in combat and received Purple Heart or more, you know, can join the Purple Heart organization, which is it's called the Military Order of Purple Heart. And they have just recently completed a museum back on the East Coast. But it's very strong, and they're very good advocates when you're weeding your way through the VA system, which at times becomes very frustrating, as you know, some of the guys will tell you. But anyway, I belong to those organizations, and you know, belong to the Elks here, which is very active in the Disabled Vet Ski Classic. Keep calling it a ski classic because it's a winter sports clinic, because they do so many other things than skiing.
Yeah, and you belong, we're in Carbondale to the American Legion?
American Legion in Carbondale.
Post 100?
Yeah, exactly.
I do too.
Yeah, you too.
And we have a lot of support working with the veterans in this Roaring Fork Veterans History Project from Glenwood, Carbondale, Basalt, Aspen, and we interview all of them, and we all hold some type of recognition for the veterans up and down the valley. Yesterday there was cemeteries and the whole thing, and it's very, very rewarding there.
Well, and it's nice to see everybody out there as far as that goes, realizing that, yeah, they had time before and after to go to their barbecues, but to take a little bit of time out and say thank you to the veterans. It's like John Summers said yesterday. He said, you know, I have been absent from a lot of these. He said, but after coming here today, he says, I realize I know where I have to be every Memorial Day. And John, you know, who hopefully you're going to interview later on, was a pilot in Vietnam. So.
Somewhat like you, that he was headed off, I believe, maybe to become a professional pilot, but wound up in Aspen, Colorado, and with a musical background. John Summers, Sandy Monroe, Cash Cashman, all naval aviators, wound up in the bluegrass music here, Heart of the Rockies with Twerp Anderson.
Right.
All of these served.
Yeah.
Sandy was Naval Academy, and so Aspen has a way of pulling us in.
Yeah, when John got here, he said he called in sick for about a week. You know, I think it was with one of the larger airline companies. I won't mention who, but, you know, he said, oh, I called in sick. Then after the first week, I called in sick for a month. Then after a while, he said, the hell with it. You know, I'm staying. You know, and I mean, he's got quite a history between, you know, writing some of the songs for John Denver. And, you know, he wrote That Country Boy, and he's quite a talent. And
his group played it for my daughter's wedding last summer and the reception, and he was my neighbor for many, many years. So it's great. We have some great support here, veteran support. Is there anything else, Fred, you'd like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
Not really. I think that we've covered pretty much most of the ground, you know, and I'd like to thank you, Colonel, once again, you know, for all that you do for the community, especially, you know, your involvement today with this, and, you know, you've been at this project now years, and, you know, I just can't say enough about my feelings for what you do for the community, and I appreciate it. And I'd like to thank the community for giving us the opportunity to be able to talk about some of these things and share our experiences and our hopes and dreams and everything else with everybody.
Well, thank you for being with us, Fred, and I hope that those that are viewing this interview that are veterans, if you would like to be interviewed, we'd love to have you. Just contact GrassRoots or myself. And Fred,
they can send a check for $500 to me or to you?
To me.
Okay.
And Fred, I'd like to present with you, I support this pin, the Roaring Fork Veterans History Project, that we used in our fundraiser. We'll be selling these at the 4th of July parade, and here you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I appreciate it, and thank you to all the GrassRoots crew and everybody who's made this project available and such a success and everything. It's an important part of us.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Okay.